Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining the Office of Court Administration. My name is Neetu Gill and I will be today's moderator. I am the project coordinator here in the Research and Court Service Division at the Office of Court Administration. The Research and Court Services Division moderates a webinar each month, and today's topic is Interpreters in the Courtroom. The speakers for today is Mr. Leonard Perales and Ms. Maria de Villiers. Mr. Leonard Perales is a licensed court interpreter with 10 years of court interpreting experience. He has provided interpretation services in Texas district and county level courts, federal courts in Texas and New Mexico district and magistrate courts. He has interpreted for many types of criminal, civil, and family law cases. Ms. Maria de Villiers has over 25 years of experience as a freelance licensed court interpreter and translator. She has experience interpreting in a variety of courts, including federal courts and Texas district courts, county courts of law, and municipal courts. Just want to say thank you everyone for joining us. And prior to beginning and bringing our speakers on, I just want to go over a few housekeeping details. Please mute your microphone. If you have a question, please use the chat box. I will be monitoring the chat box throughout the webinar. If there is a technical question such as you can't hear or if you can't see the screen, please let us know and I will address that immediately. Questions pertaining to the presentation will be addressed at the end of the webinar. And now without further ado, I would like to welcome our two speakers, Mr. Leonard Perales and Ms. Maria de Villiers.
Hello everyone. My name is Leonard Perales and it's an honor to be participating in this series of webinars here with OCA, and we have a lot of good information to be sharing with you, and we look forward to participating in this webinar with the attendees today. Hello, Maria.
Hi, Leo, and hi to all of you who are joining us today. Thank you so much. I am Maria de Villiers, another interpreter in our Language Access Department. We are so excited to have you with us today because together we will explore the presence of court interpreters in our courtrooms. Also, we're going to be sharing with you the reasons why interpreters are brought into our legal system. The Texas statutes dictating the presence of interpreters in our Texas courts, and also the impact of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 in the role of interpreters in our courtrooms. And last but not least, we will be getting on board with Leo to navigate through our Texas Judicial Branch website so that you may see how easy it is to find licensed court interpreters and how quickly you can enroll your court to receive our free Texas court remote services.
So now let's discuss, before we begin the statutes portion of the webinar, we'd like to discuss a little bit about the history of the regulation of interpreters and why there are interpreters that are being regulated in the state of Texas. You see, prior to 2001, there really was no regulatory entity to qualify and govern spoken language and sign language interpreters, because the only existing regulation was for spoken languages in the federal court system. So many of us remember hearing or using federal interpreters. That was really the only certification, certified interpreters that existed, but there was nothing in the state courts. So our Texas legislative branch understood the need to qualify and to regulate the interpreters, and it was in 2001 that it delegated that rule-making authority for both spoken languages and sign language interpreters to two distinct agencies back in 2001. And since now in 2013, this authority has now been passed over to the Judicial Branch Certification Commission, or JBCC, who regulates spoken language interpreters. That's under the Office of Court Administration, or OCA. And for sign language interpreters, they are now regulated by the Board for Evaluation of Interpreters, or BEI, which is under the Department of Health and Human Services. Those are the two entities that regulate interpreters at this present time.
Interpreters are very needed in Texas. As of last year, 2017, we have a population of 28,300,000 Texans in our state. One in every 6 Texans reports to have limited English proficiency. We refer to these individuals as LEPs, and through this webinar you will be listening to that acronym, LEP, just like to the endearing acronym OCA for our Texas Office of Court Administration. Having such a large amount of individuals with limited English proficiency, this means that we are facing a population of about 4.5 million Texans with this existing limited proficiency in English. This sets the stage for the role of interpreters in bridging the gap in communication in all sets of life, medical, religious, in order to receive benefits from the government, and more so in our judicial system. As they cross the threshold of our courthouses, where they have a right to due process and equal access to justice, it is through court interpreters that they are able to receive such an access to justice. The main languages spoken in Texas, besides English and Spanish, of course, are Vietnamese, Mandarin, and Korean. And take note, our Judicial Branch Certification Commission, which Leo referred to earlier under OCA, licenses all of these 4 languages in interpreters: the Spanish, the Vietnamese, the Mandarin, and the Korean.
So now let's discuss about when exactly a spoken or sign language interpreter is appointed by the court. Specifically, and this applies to both civil and criminal cases. According to this Texas Government Code section 57.002, it addresses when a spoken or a sign language interpreter needs to be appointed by the court. And as we can see here, any of the following may apply. So during any time in the duration of the case or during any proceeding, if there is a motion from a party, or if there was a request from a witness, or if the court on its own motion requests an interpreter, then that is when an interpreter is appointed by the court. Now, related to this Texas Government Code 57.002, we go into the matter of who can act as an interpreter in my county in particular. And this is where we begin to discuss what I like to talk about: small counties and large counties. But in reality, the state statute identifies those counties as counties with population of over 50,000 people or counties with population of under 50,000 people. So as we can see here on this slide, let's discuss the information on the left-hand side. If you are in a court or in a county with a population of less than 50,000 population, then that interpreter who is going to interpret must meet these 3 rules. 1, first, they must be qualified as an expert under the Texas Rules of Evidence. 2, they have to be at least 18 years of age. And 3, they must not be a party to the proceeding. So in a county of a population of less than 50,000, these are the requirements of who can interpret in a court for that proceeding. If we look at the right-hand side, these requirements are now for counties with population of over 50,000, larger counties in Texas. In this case, we can see here that if it's for the Spanish language, then yes, the Spanish interpreter must be a licensed court interpreter. However, if it's for a language other than Spanish, any other language, and there is no licensed court interpreter found for that language within 75 miles of the court, then a court may appoint an interpreter that is unlicensed. And once again, we fall back to that the requirements on the left-hand side. That unlicensed interpreter must meet that 3 rule requirement.
As Leo just mentioned, the Texas Rules of Evidence state the qualifying of an individual as an expert. Under Texas Rules of Evidence, specifically 702 and also 604, an individual is qualified as an expert by knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education. Let me repeat that to you. An expert is qualified by knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education. And it is up to the court to inquire from the prospect interpreter on her ability to speak the native language of the charged individual or witness for whom she will be interpreting. Also, the court may inquire on her ability to speak the English language and for how long she has spoken both languages, and if she has had any formal education or experience with languages or with interpreting. Once this information is captured, the court then will be able to establish the qualifications of the prospect interpreter and then render her as an expert.
So now let's discuss the actual specific requirements of Article 3830 in criminal cases. I'm going to let Maria, listen to Maria and see what this has, what the statutes say.
Thank you, Leo. Let's move on to this appointment of a spoken language interpreter. And we're talking about a spoken language interpreter. Keep that in mind. In criminal cases, which is ruled under Article 3830 of the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure. In criminal cases, when a motion for appointment of a spoken language interpreter is filed, or if on motion of the court it is determined that the person charged or the witness has limited English proficiency, an interpreter must be appointed and sworn to interpret for said individual. This interpreter will also be under the same rules and penalties as those provided for witnesses. Take note that if the appointed interpreter for any reason is not competently equipped to interpret, in other words, if the interpreter lacks the tools for, let's say, the usage of slang, colloquial expressions, or technical issues that may be dealt with at the time, then the person charged or the witness may be permitted by the court to nominate another individual who will act as intermediary between the LEP and the appointed interpreter during the proceeding. Now let's discuss the appointment of a sign language interpreter in criminal cases. Let's see. It is dictated also by Article 3831 of the very same Texas Code of Criminal Procedure. And when a motion for a sign language interpreter is filed, like in the prior case with the spoken language interpreters, or again, if on motion of the court, it is determined that the charged individual or witness suffers from deafness or from hearing impairment, a qualified sign language interpreter must be appointed and sworn to interpret for the person charged or the witness. Let us emphasize that qualified interpreter in this case means an interpreter who holds a legal certification issued by the National Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf, or who holds a current interpreter's certification issued by the Board of Evaluation of Interpreters. In other words, the sign language interpreter must be at all times a certified interpreter. Let's keep something else in mind, that sign language interpreters are certified and spoken language interpreters are licensed. The certification for sign language interpreters is issued, like Leo mentioned earlier, by the Board of Evaluation of Interpreters. And the licensure for spoken interpreters issued by JBCC, which is under OCA. In both instances, the interpreters have undergone rigorous and strenuous examinations, both written and oral, and written and in sign language. And they had to pass these and in order to be rendered as qualified interpreters.
So now let's discuss the appointment of spoken or sign language interpreters in civil cases. Maria did an excellent job discussing the requirements in criminal cases, but let's see what the statutes say regarding civil cases. As we can see here, Under the Texas Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 183, it states that the court is the one who may appoint a spoken or a sign language interpreter of its own selection in civil cases. And the statute states that the court may fix the interpreter's reasonable compensation. And it's up to the discretion of the court in reality to direct that the interpreter's compensation be paid out of either the funds provided by law or by one or more of the parties, or ultimately taxed as costs. Now, this discretionary directive from the court brings up a possible consideration of the Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Title VI of the Civil Rights Act has a direct impact on the presence of interpreters in the court system. It states that every effort should be taken to ensure competent interpretation of LEP individuals during all hearings, trials, and motions. Therefore, charging such costs, the cost of an interpreter, against a party could in reality have the effect of impairing that party's participation in the proceedings or denying them equal access to the court. Because if a party cannot afford to pay for an interpreter, it could very well be that they are being denied that equal access to the court. Therefore, judges and counties are encouraged to discuss this matter with their county attorney or with the attorney general. Now, the Department of Justice has issued a guidance letter that refers to the importance of meaningful access to the courts and courtrooms without distinguishing if it's a civil or a criminal case or an administrative matter. Therefore, it would be very prudent if courts refer to this letter for additional guidance.
It is my pleasure now to move to another topic and introduce you to our Texas Office of Court Administration. Like I told you earlier, we refer to it as OCA. And this agency, our OCA agency, is a unique state agency which operates under the direction of the Supreme Court of Texas. You'll get to know us more, and by knowing us more, you will love us even more. Since 1977, in other words, since 40 years ago, the professional staff in our OCA has provided resources and information to the Texas judiciary on behalf of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. We are dedicated to the effective administration of justice and to provide high-quality consultative, legal, technological, funding, and supportive services to the judiciary and other branches of government. Just look at that. We offer all these type of supports: consultative, legal, technological, funding, and supporting services. So now you know who to come to whenever you're in the need of an answer to a question, a doubt, give us a comment, or anything that you may be needing. In addition to serving the courts and the judicial administration community, OCA also seeks to provide the Texas public, the legislature, and the executive branch with news and other information on recent developments, trends, innovations, and enactments related to the judiciary. In short, OCA's mission is to provide resources and information for the efficient administration of the judicial branch of Texas. And we love to do this for all of you. Now then, within the resources provided by OCA, which I've mentioned already, and under the Language Access Department, we offer also to our courts free remote interpreting services. Yes, you heard right, free, totally free remote interpreting services by telephone interpreting and video remote interpreting in short, non-contested, non-evidentiary hearings of 30 minutes or less in length. Our court remote interpreter service, which we refer to by the acronym TCRIS, is a program that was implemented in January of 2013. And since then, many of our courts have been able to schedule hearings in advance through our user-friendly online appointment scheduler system. And they have been able also to receive our services on a same-day, on-demand basis, either by calling us through our phone lines, or by emailing us, but of course subject to our availability, the interpreter's availability. As you can see, it's easy to have access to our free remote interpreting services. We are competent, licensed, professional interpreters at your service. In a moment, we will navigate with Leo through our Texas Judicial Branch website so that you can see for yourselves how easy it is to finding a court interpreter.
So now let's look at how to find a court interpreter through our Texas Judicial Branch website. We've put up some screenshots and we want to share them with you at this time. In order to locate an interpreter, let's assume that one needs to find a Spanish interpreter or in any of the languages that are spoken by LEPs that Maria was discussing. We want to go to this website. It's www.txcourts.gov. And keep in mind, from these in these series of slides, you're going to see these little red boxes. We've put these boxes in order to highlight where exactly you have to click, but when you actually navigate to these web pages, you won't see these boxes, but we put them in to show where exactly you need to go or click on. So once you go to txcourts.gov, this is the Texas Judicial Branch website. And what you want to do is you want to hover your mouse over that menu bar where it says Programs and Services. When you hover your mouse over Programs and Services, that menu is going to pop up, and what you want to do is you want to click on Interpretation and Translation. So you click on Interpretation and Translation, and then it takes you to this Interpretation and Translation web page. This is the web page that has a lot of information regarding spoken language and sign language. But as you can see here, there are where you want to click on to find an interpreter, you want to click on Language Access in Texas Courts in that box. So let's click there. From here, you're going to be taken to our resources page. Everything having to do with language access and interpreters is on this page, and it's a very long web page. And what you want to do for languages other than the top 4 languages spoken by LEPs in Texas, you want to scroll to the very bottom, and you'll see there additional resources. So for example, Gujarati language, or Punjabi language, or Nepali language, if you have any of those other languages that are not the top 4 spoken languages in Texas, then these resources will be very helpful. And what the first one is, the Texas Department of Information Resources. What the Texas Department of Information Resources has done, it has pre-negotiated rates with additional language service providers in Texas and nationwide. And they've put all of the information there on their website. And here we've included a link directly to the DIR so that the courts can take advantage of these vendors that the Department of Information Resources has negotiated with and contracted with. And the second link is an interpreter locator listserv for courts. And it's basically an information board or a distribution list to where if any court personnel needs additional resources to locate an interpreter in a different language, they can email this email address, and we will distribute that email to other court coordinators or court personnel in the area, and maybe that'll help assist in locating that interpreter. So this step 3 are for languages other than the top 4 languages spoken in Texas. However, if you are looking for either Spanish or Vietnamese or Korean, on this same website, you just scroll to the very top and you want to click right there where it says Licensed Court Interpreters. So let's click there. And what's going to happen is another pop-up a window's going to pop up. And this is the electronic database that JBCC has, and they have all of the licensed court interpreters in this database. And all you have to do is click Generate Excel, and what's going to happen is that an Excel spreadsheet is going to be generated and it's going to be downloaded to your computer, and you'll want to click on that Excel spreadsheet. So once you click there, you'll see the spreadsheet. You click on the spreadsheet, and this is how it's going to look like. You see here, it's an Excel spreadsheet, and it has all of the information of those interpreters. And it's categorized by their name, by their certification type, by the county that they live in, and their phone number and their primary email address. And this is where you'll be able to either filter the spreadsheet, or if you prefer not to filter it, just key in Control F, and that pops up the search function, and you can type any information, either a county or a name or a language, and you can go through the search results like that. Now, we want to keep two things in mind. As Maria had mentioned before, you'll sometimes maybe use the term, well, I need a certified interpreter. Well, keep in mind, this is the database or an Excel spreadsheet of all of the spoken language interpreters. So in reality, you're requesting a licensed court interpreter. Otherwise, we don't want any courts to suffer any confusion when doing their search. And also keep in mind, as you can see there in the second column, you'll see there that some interpreters have a master court interpreter license. Other interpreters have a basic court interpreter license. Well, what's the difference? The only difference is the basic court interpreter license interpreters can only interpret in justice courts and municipal courts that are not municipal courts of record. And a master court interpreter license can interpret in any court in Texas, from county level and district and municipal courts and justice courts.
Leo, what a great navigation experience. I'm sure our audience is very happy with all this information. So if they can keep on navigating with you, may we do so with you so you can tell us how to become users of our free remote interpreting services.
That's right. Let's go ahead and do that. So the same web page, the txcourts.gov, and you remember you want to hover over programs and services and click on interpretation and translation. We're back here again, but instead of clicking on language access and Texas courts, you'll want to click on Texas Court Remote Interpreter Service. So we'll click there, and then it takes us to our remote interpreter service web page. And you'll see that big red button, Schedule an Interpreter. You'll want to click there. It takes us in a new window, and we'll see this web page. And this is our appointment scheduling website or software. It's a web-based software. You'll want to click on Make Appointment for Spanish. And here you'll see two tabs right there. One says Log In, one says Enrollment. If this is your first time using this free service, you'll want to first click on the Enrollment tab, and then when you click on the Enrollment tab, you'll see all of those fields that you have to complete. You just put your court's first name, last name, the name of the court, all of that information. Then you can continue and go all the way to the bottom. Then when you're at the bottom, you'll see this button that says Enroll. Once you finish completing your profile, then you want to click on Enroll at the bottom of the page. So that's how easy it is to enroll for our free remote interpreting services.
Great. Well, thank you, Leo and Maria. I want to open up the floor to any questions we may have for our speakers. If you have a question, please use the chat box and just type it in, and I'll kind of monitor as it comes through. And Leo and Maria, it looks like we do have a question. One of our attendees has asked, to schedule an appointment, can I email you directly, or do I have to go on the website and schedule it?
Well, it's better if you can do both, as a matter of fact. If you schedule us through our online appointment scheduler, you will have the certainty that time is specifically blocked for your court, and an interpreter will be standing by on the date and at the time that you requested us. Now then, if it so happens that in your docket for a day, let's say for today, you happen to realize that there's an LEP among the individuals appearing before the court, your court go ahead and just send us an email and tell us that you need our services in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or right away, or give us a call. You'll find both contact information on the slide on our screen. The phone number, which is our main line, 512-463-5656, or send us an email at interpreter@txcourts.gov. Upon availability, if Leo and I do not have any other hearings and are free, we can gladly take your hearing and assist your court right then and there as we pick up the phone or take the email.
Great, thank you, Maria. We actually do have another question that's come in. Can you show step 5 for the enrollment process?
Sure. So the enrollment process, you wanted to see step 5. So what we'll show is this is the section of the website where you have to, let's go ahead and scroll to the very top. So let's go one slide before. This is step 5 of the enrollment process. I know it says step 4 there on the slide. However, you'll see there that when you click on enrollment, this is going to be the profile that you have to complete. You have to complete your court's profile, and then when you scroll at the very bottom, then you'll see this step 5. You click on this button down there at the bottom that says enroll. What you're going to do is you'll see right above enroll, you'll see you're going to type your username that you want to have and your password that you want to have, and then you enroll. You use that username and password to log in this same website. That's the step 5 on enrolling. Thank you.
If you're talking about to schedule an interpreter right from the beginning, when Leo was explaining on step 2 as to clicking on the bottom reading schedule an interpreter, you can start from there. And as Leo walked us through the whole navigation for enrollment, the next step 3 will show you where to make an appointment for Spanish, and then is the enrollment slide that Leo just showed to you and which is currently on our screen. Pretty easy, user-friendly.
Great. Before we get to the additional questions that are coming through, I have received quite a few questions about the PowerPoint presentation, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it up earlier. I was going to save it to the end, but I will. So all of these webinar recordings, webinars will go on our website at a date that actually we haven't disclosed yet. However, in the meantime, I will send all of our attendees a Dropbox link that will include the PowerPoint presentation and as well as the recording of the webinar so you can view it again. So hopefully that'll put a few of y'all at ease. I know it was a lot of information, it's a lot to jot down, so please know that I will send out the PowerPoint along with the webinar recording. And Maria and Leo, we just have a few more questions if you just want to spend a few more minutes with us.
Sure.
One of our attendees has asked, is a criminal plea hearing and evidentiary hearing precluding the free service?
That's a very good question. We do take criminal pleas with this free service. So as long as it's an agreed plea, which generally it is, that's why there's a plea bargain. As long as it's a short, quick plea, we can definitely take it. But if it's a plea and sentencing where it's maybe an open plea and the sentencing is going to require a lot of witnesses, we wouldn't be able to offer that because for fear that it may go over the 30 minutes or it may be considered a contested matter. But a short plea, definitely we can take those.
Great. We have another question that's come through. It looks like it's a hot topic today. Can an appointed attorney call the number from the jail while visiting his or her clients, or is this strictly during court hearings?
As of now, this free remote interpreting service is only for courtroom proceedings, and that's the only way that we're doing it so far. The one thing that we do service in order to for the court to have the certainty that the individual pleading understood all the documentation that he signed, we do offer a pleading hearing conference between the defendant and his or her client. Excuse me, the defendant and his or her counselor, attorney. The attorney, if he's English spoken individual, will not be able to communicate well with his client. Therefore, we do offer the service of interpreting on this conference between them two, so that the defendant understands well all the different things he's committing to, and conditions, terms, and the plea agreement in itself. And from there, usually we're put on hold and we walk straight into the plea hearing, so that the judge is satisfied with the fact that, okay, the defendant understood everything that he agreed to with the prosecution. Let's move on and let's take the hearing. So it has to be an immediate thing, the conference between client and attorney, and then moving right away into the courtroom for the plea hearing. That's how we can make this only exception. But as far as what you were mentioning, regretfully, as of now, we cannot offer that service.
Thank you, Maria. We had another one of our attendees mention, Leo, you had mentioned a letter in one of the previous slides. I think it's okay if we include that in a resource in the Dropbox. And Maria and Leo, if you have any other resources, feel free to send that to me, and I'll make sure that the attendees receive it. So to all the attendees, you will receive a Dropbox link that will include the webinar recording, the PowerPoint presentation, and some resources, including the letter that was mentioned in one of the slides. Without that, I just want to conclude, say thank you to all of our attendees for joining us. Before you log off, I just want to request if you can please complete the evaluation that will be sent out. That just helps us expand our webinars and help us learn from it. And I want to say thank you to Maria and Leo for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much, and please evaluate us. We would like to receive all those comments from you all, and keep in mind where to contact us. Phone number and email is being provided to you before, and you will be getting the PowerPoint presentation too. Take care, and thanks again.